This video is going to be going over some prerequisite lore for the Origin episode, for anybody who either wants to start learning about it because you top right all story, or if you just want a recap or to see if there's anything that you missed. First up, big thanks to Expander12 for helping me with gathering all of the info for this, and also just letting me bounce some of my thoughts off him about the story itself. This video is not going to be covering stuff like exactly what happened in episodes 1 through 5, because the 6th world, where the Origin episode is going to be taking place, happens about 20 years before episode 1 actually starts. So some of the stuff that happens afterwards in the 7th world, episodes 1 through 5, isn't really too relevant. I will be mentioning any stuff related to stuff like the Acolytes, because some of them appear in later episodes that occur. So stuff like that will be mentioned, but anything that I think isn't really going to be necessary for the Origin episode won't be mentioned. First up, we can take a look at the world introduction video that is actually up on the official Epic 7 channel.
DJ, the goddess of life, mourned the death of Orbis, the god of nature, who had perished during the Celestial War. DJ, in her sorrow, created a new world upon Orbis's fallen body. That was this place, the land of Orbis. The primordial god Nihilum attempted to destroy Orbis, but DJ and the other gods refused to move. Eventually, Nihilum manipulated one of the gods and sent the Archdemon to destroy Orbis. DJ created a being to defend the world from the Archdemon. The people named him the goddess's heir of the covenant. Along with the guardians and the other heirs, the heir of the covenant defeated the Archdemon and restored peace to the world. But Helios sent a new Archdemon, and thus the cycle began. The heir of the covenant and the Archdemon fighting without end. The world suffered under repeated attacks until eventually it fell to the Archdemon. But DJ used the power of creation to restore her fallen world. This cycle produced numerous victories and defeats over the course of its long history. But now, this war has reached its final battle.
This video is just a surface introduction to the world though, so let's get into some of the deeper stuff that wasn't mentioned. Besides Nihilum, there was another primordial god, Prima, and these were the two factions in the Celestial War. At some point in the war, Aethra, the universe that the main story takes place in, dies and creates the 4 sibling gods: Tiche, the goddess of life, Orbis, the god of nature, Ilros, the god of the sun, and Lunaris, the goddess of the moon. The name of the universe hasn't been confirmed yet in the modern lore, but the 4 gods being siblings remains canon. Prima eventually loses the war, splitting into fragments, and at least one of his fragments ends up in Orbis. One of the fragments is said to contain Prima's soul, and that is where the heart of Orbis is currently located. Dark Nebula, a group of celestial beings that follow Nihilum, starts hunting down the fragments. Its known members so far are Fastus, who appears in episode 2 as the primary antagonist, and Demudo, who appears near the end of episode 4. Nox and Varus are 2 more members who have been mentioned, but only in now deleted text from Smallgate, so it's unknown whether those 2 will return. Especially since those 2's names were put out way before episode 4 came out, yet Demudo appeared in the story first. Fastus comes across a soul fragment on Orbis, leading to his involvement in the story. This part is a little bit ambiguous with the info that we have. In the old deleted lore, it was said that Fastus launched a meteor at Orbis and killed him. In episode 2, via the Chandran's prophecies, we are told that another star fragment too big to really be called a fragment lands on Orbis, and the impact is so severe that it kills Orbis as well as most life on the planet. Ross mentions that this is the first time DJ restores the world, and none of the Chandrans remember this happening because when she revived them, or rather she restored the world, she opted to remove their memories. This somewhat contradicts the world introduction, as it said that DJ created a new world on Orbis' fallen body after he died in the war. But episode 2 shows us that there was already life on the planet actually when the second fragment fell and Orbis died. Either this is a plot hole, or we can say that DJ preserved Orbis' life when he was near death by turning him into a planet, leaving him in a more or less comatose state, and then the second star fragment falling fully killed him. It could also be that Orbis was already a planet of sorts that housed life when he was a living god, and then he died and DJ recreated the world. So we're not too sure about that one. The other question is, has the fastest meteor lore been retconned? We know that there is indeed a second Prima fragment on Orbis. It's all the way over in Eurasia, as Fumir discovers prior to the events of episode 5. There's a couple of possibilities. It's possible that the Chandrans mistook Fastus's meteor attack as the second star fragment. They did mention that it was really large compared to the first fragment. It's also possible that Fastus sending the meteor just isn't canon anymore. Either one's possible, really. They haven't really mentioned Fastus attacking the Orbis at any point in the story yet, and there does kind of need to be a reason why the Tree of Genesis grew all the way over in Eurasia. It's kind of weird why the second star fragment would be so much larger than the first one and just kill everybody on impact when the first one didn't really have any sort of noticeable effect. I did consider what if there's just only one star fragment and they grew from the same fragment, but I think that's kind of hard just because Eurasia is so far away from Britannia, and we know that the Sanctuary has to be protecting the fragment as it houses Orbis's, or rather Prima's soul, and that's the whole reason Fastus is going for it, so it needs to be in a way that's protected, and it's kind of hard for it to grow all the way over in Eurasia if it's like that. The one in Eurasia also could have just grown off of a different power, but Fumir does explicitly mention that it's a dead god's fragment within the world, masquerading as a tree spreading life force, and the whole tree spreading life force thing is pretty specific to the Tree of Genesis. So hopefully this is something that gets cleared up eventually. Regardless, Fastus does approach Orbis to destroy it and collect the fragment. There's this portion of episode 2 where Ellen is translating the Chandran's text, and it goes over pretty much exactly what happened with the whole DJ, Lunaris, Ilros, and Fastus situation. So we can start from here. Life will cling to nature. DJ, the goddess of life, will cling to Orbis, the god of nature. Orbis dies, and DJ will make life on his planet, or restore the world, or whatever happened, since we mentioned that it's unclear. And the moon will protect its sibling. Lunaris is the goddess of the moon. And then Ras mentions that it's talking about Lunaris' barrier, as Lunaris erects a giant barrier over Britannia. This is the barrier that's mentioned at some point in the story that's preventing anybody from getting in or out of Britannia, really, with some very minor effects, or minor cases where people can manage to get in and out, but for the most part, it's blocking everybody out. And then on the other hand, Ilros is acting as the main line of defense against Fastus. However, Ilros, the god of the sun, once he actually does fight Fastus, he manages to fall into a trap and he becomes corrupted. And then there will be conflict between the life and the sun, so between DJ and Ilros, and they will fight through proxies. Ilros creates the Archdemon to destroy the world, and DJ responds by creating Ras as well as the Guardians to defeat the Archdemon. Ras defeats the first Archdemon. Ilros just sends another one, so falling and rising again and again. If Ilros, his Archdemon, loses, he just makes another one. If Ras loses, DJ just restores the world and revives Ras. So this is the cycle of destruction and recreation that we end up in, and that is where Epic 7 kicks off. In the prologue, we're shown the end of the 6th world, where Ras dies and the world is destroyed, bringing us into the 7th world. Typically, when DJ recreates the world, Ras wakes up before the final Archdemon War occurs. Each time this happens, though, DJ's power and Ras's power, because he is her avatar, gets weaker. This is what leads to Ras waking up after the Archdemon War takes place in the 7th world, instead of before the war, as he usually does. Each time the world is recreated, though, DJ also erases the memory of the failed Archdemon War from all residents of Orbis. The exceptions would be Ras, the Guardians, the Spirit Lords, all of these having been created by DJ, the Nocturnes, who were created by Lunaris, the Acolytes, who were created by various forces, and aliens like Politis. The heirs that get chosen by Guardians are also unable to be revived, and new ones must be chosen in the new world. It's not explained exactly why heirs can't be revived. It could be a possible consequence of them taking in power from the Guardians who were created by DJ, but this is something that could potentially be explained later on. Now let's get into the Origins content we saw. First up, this sixth world will contain Ras at full power. This means that we are most likely not getting exactly what happened in the sixth world we saw in the prologue, but an alternate universe instead. With DJ growing weaker and weaker each time the world is destroyed, Ras shouldn't have been able to awaken at his full power in the sixth world. In fact, we've seen him in his normal form in 2 worlds prior to the sixth world. This is more like the first world's Ras waking up in the sixth world, which means that we aren't necessarily locked into the bad ending that we get in the prologue, and things might not play out the exact same. There's also one more important piece of information about the worlds. First, let's talk about the gap between Archdemon Wars. As far as we know, there is typically a very large gap between Archdemon Wars. Morphid in episode 1 mentions that Ras slew the Archdemon in the Tagahel ruins hundreds of years ago, according to legend. This likely refers to the previous time Ras succeeded in defeating the Archdemon, meaning that it's been a very, very long time since Ras last appeared in the world. At least as far as the people remember. In the Vildred side story, though, we see that Vildred was present for the final war in Aki's world, where they most likely failed, as every single Guardian and heir except Aki is dead or just not present in the fight for whatever reason. Aki himself burns out his life to stall Kayron while Ras and Vildred approach the Sanctuary. We see another world in a different flashback, where Vildred is again present and talking to Ras at the Sanctuary and they take on Kayron. Here, Ras mentions multiple heirs and asks if they're dead already, implying that they're fighting above, which shows that it's a new world as every heir is already dead by the time they reach the Sanctuary in Aki's world. The sixth world again has Vildred present, of course, and we move on to the seventh world 20 years later in the future, past the Archdemon War. The seventh world is a bit of a special case because Kayron does approach Vildred and gives him Archdemon power afterwards, so that could explain him not really aging in that one. But how is it possible for Vildred to be present in worlds 4, 5, 6, and 7? We know that 6 is a failure, so it's reasonable that Vildred is in both 6 and 7, so the question is more about 4, 5, and 6. The answer is that the final Archdemon in Aki's world is probably the same Archdemon that Ras fails to defeat in the 5th and 6th world as well. This would be the same Archdemon that ends up sealed during Eulogy of a Saint thanks to the sacrifice of the Nocturnes, and later possesses Mercedes during episode 1. Ras himself backs this up in chapter 1, when he thinks to himself about him and Vildred fighting many times but always failing to defeat the Archdemon. With this, I'd say we can assume that Ras has actually been stuck here for a while now, spending all of at least worlds 5 and 6 to take down the Archdemon, as well as the first portion of world 7 where he does finally succeed. They do fail to defeat the Archdemon in world 4 as well, but it's not necessarily the case that this Archdemon was present in world 3, as there can be multiple Archdemons per world, since the world is only restored if Ras falls. The introduction video mentions that when Ras first arrived, he defeated the Archdemon, then another one was sent, and potentially much more after, meaning that the first world existed for a pretty long period of time due to Ras winning multiple wars if there is going to be such a long period of time between Archdemon wars. A Ras strong enough to defeat multiple Archdemons in a row appearing in the sixth world is definitely going to have the potential to change a lot of things. Next up is the Guardians. Hanian is a Guardian that appears in the Origin Showcase, and he actually appears during episode 1 for all of 5 seconds. He gets beat up and captured off screen, and then later killed on screen, more or less, by Vildred. We'll see if they decide to add more Guardians and also by association more heirs in the 6th world or any of the previous worlds. Even with the glimpse we've had into the 4th world, we didn't really gain any sort of info on that because by the time we saw the 6th world where Aki was fighting at the end, every single heir except him was dead, and all of the Guardians were either dead or incapacitated as they just weren't present in the final fight at all. For what we do know about the 6th world and its Guardians, Kromkruz is with Kisei, Zayon is with Ruel, Siegfried is with Victoria, Hanian is with Renok, and then there is Kazran, who we don't know his Guardian or his heir yet, but there are some theories. The Acolytes are also really interesting. We honestly don't know much about them at all. It seems like they're created independently from Ildros and only side with Ildros to achieve their own goals. They're also essentially immortal. Even if they are killed, if someone summons them again, they'll just come back. There's 5 known acolytes: Cheiron, Tenebria, Nogol, Tiwig, and Adelhad. Cheiron is one of the most present ones in the story. He mentions wanting eternal rest in the Guilty Gear side story as his main goal. As long as there's sentient life on Orbis, though, he won't be able to achieve this, so the obvious solution is to just kill everybody. And that is why he fights and why he joins the Archdemon's side. If he manages to kill everybody, then he gets his eternal rest finally. Tenebria is probably the one we know the most about, and also know very little. She's insanely powerful for one. Her powers primarily focus on nightmares and forms of mind control and manipulation, but honestly, no one's really sure exactly what the limits of her powers are. In the alternate world Vivian ends up in during Game of Princes, Tenebria manages to defeat Ras by herself and end up taking over his mind and just completely ruling over that world pretty much. We also have a bit of info from Ras about her age, calling her out on thousands of years of shenanigans during the Nixide Labyrinth. In the Guilty Gear side story, she also tells Cheiron that she wants to see the world burn just as much as any of the other acolytes. And then like 5 minutes later, she tells Eno that she doesn't actually have any goal, and she thinks it'd be kind of fun to spread nightmares in other continents as well. So I would say Tenebria is just here for chaos, and her goals, no one really knows. Her origin story can actually be found in the special side story Blood and Roses, so you could definitely check that out if you're interested. Nogol hates elves, and is connected to the Asmanic race. That's all we really got on him. Tiwig is a bit of a special case. She's a background antagonist of sorts in episode 3, as the red stone that gets passed around and leads to the tragedy that occurs with Senya is actually a fragment of Tiwig. I'll just read out what Ross says about her here. Tiwig does not have a physical presence. She only reveals herself via the stone. She appeals to the weakness in people's hearts, luring them in by promising to make their wishes come true, and enticing them to make the worst decisions. Decisions that would result in the sacrifice of many lives, and eventually shatter the bearer's soul into pieces. And we can see the redstone in action with Ida here as well. She's just straight up telling her that you can't wield the stone's power as long as you have notions of compassion, and that you need to feel misery, resentment, and outrage, and fall deeper and deeper into despair in order to make yourself stronger. And then eventually Ida does cave in her time of need. The redstone tempts her once again, saying, "Accept my power," and Ida decides that, yep, she'll pay the price no matter what it takes, and asks for the power. And the stone says, "Blood stains your hand, not your, as well as your entire being," and the stone will become stronger, and the result of Ida taking in the stone's power, Ida does manage to stop the attack that was approaching her, but she also in the process kills a bunch of people and completely obliterates the land around where she was, and it just becomes completely inhabitable. And also, this is what causes Ida to have such big regrets about what she did that she locks herself in the prison for 500 years until the main party finds her eating rats. We can also see Paulus talking about the redstone with Senya, Senya being somebody who has used the redstone for 5 years at this point. And Paulus says that the source of the redstone's power is the Dark Star's energy. The Dark Star refers to Nihilum, who is the leader of the Dark Nebula. So I would say that Tiwig, being the redstone, is probably made by one of the Dark Nebula members, though we don't necessarily know who. Another interesting thing is Ross saying that he wasn't aware that Tiwig's influence reached outside of Britannia, because this means that he did encounter her in Britannia, and it also means that Tiwig was working in multiple places at the same time. She was in Britannia and Eureka, both times doing pretty much the exact same thing, since Ross is familiar with the way that she operates. And this also means that as somebody who doesn't have a physical body, it means that she can probably embed herself in more than just one object. All of the redstones, as well as the comet eyes, all came from the same meteorite that landed in Paletia. Straze goes to the meteorite to get the red ore from it to make the comet's eyes that he uses in episode 2. And at the same time, while all of that was happening, or while she was doing things in Eureka, like influencing Senya and Ida, she was also doing things in Britannia at the same time. Adelhad appears in episode 4, but he is not in the greatest spot. Not only does he get forced into submission by Zio, Zio later gets taken over by Demudo, one of the celestial beings in the Dark Nebula that I mentioned earlier. So Adelhad is basically under 2 layers of submission. Even if he gets past Zio, he's going to have a hell of a time getting past Demudo. Plus, all 3 of them are now sealed, so even though he's technically still alive, he's definitely not having a good time. It'd be nice to get more info about some of the known acolytes and potentially unknown ones in the Origin episode as well. And that's it for the lore video. Like I said, it's only covering things that are related to what should be happening in the prequel in the 6th world. It's definitely missing a lot of stuff that happened in episodes 1 through 5, though even just this already took me like 2 to 3 days to gather all of the info. The Origin episode should hopefully be good. It being an alternate universe is interesting, or if they somehow rewrite the story to have this actually fit, it would also be interesting. So we'll see what happens there. I do have a lot of theories about some of the stuff that we see in the trailer, as well as theories from other people that I've heard. So that will probably be in the next video.